Hello and welcome to the Car Care Nut channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about some of the common issues that I've seen with the 18 and up Toyota Camry. People have described this Camry as revolutionary. It has too much technology, too many computers, and automatically assume that they have too many problems. That is not the case. These things are pretty reliable. They are very technologically advanced. They do have a few issues, most of which are covered under warranty. In this video, we're going to discuss some of these issues so you're well aware when you're buying one or if you own one, what are the issues that you can look up to if they ever occur. But before we get started, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. Without further ado, let's dig right into it. A small note before we start this video and go into the categories. This car is too new. It's only 2 years old as of the filming of this video. So I cannot cover all the future issues that these cars will have. After all, it's a Toyota. It's really simple. You take care of these things, they'll take care of you. But in this video, I'm trying to tell you the current problem trends for these cars so you know you can pick up on the ones that are neglected and not buy them, or know how to take care of these cars well. At the end of this video, I'll also give you some DIY tips that are specific to this car so you can do most of the repairs that are a little unusual or a little bit of the maintenance that is unusual about these cars. Starting with the engine category, and this car came with two engines, the 4-cylinder 2.5 and the 6-cylinder 3.5. The 3.5 is a carryover for the most part. It's a little bit updated, has direct injection, port injection as well. It's really a carryover, but the 4-cylinder engine in this car is brand new. And I encourage you to watch a series that I made about this engine, detailing all its new technology. I'll leave it right here for you. I'll also put it in the description of this video. So the 4-cylinder engine in this car had a few issues, and they were limited to the 18 model. So I have good faith that these problems were early production problems. However, if you're shopping for an 18, they can be had for a really good price these days, and it's a lot of car for the money. You need to be aware of some of these issues. First one is, whatever you do, do not put anything other than 0W16. I know old school mechanics. I'm one of those people. I think that oil is a little too thin, but this engine is designed for this oil, so you must use this oil. There's no substitute, no alternating this. I'll use different oil every other oil. No, use 0W16. Otherwise, trust me, you're gonna have problems. We've already seen problems, engines knocking, damage, rod bearing damage, all kinds of issues because of the wrong oil was used. So make sure you use the right oil in these engines. Another issue that popped up with these engines is fuel. These engines are a little bit sensitive to fuel. Don't go putting premium fuel in these engines. They take 87. That's all they need, and they run perfectly fine. But make sure you're using high quality fuel in these cars. Top tier fuel is highly recommended in these cars. The direct injection system doesn't take very kindly to not so good quality fuel. I personally don't like fuel additives. I think the engineers did a great job on this engine. Also, the engineers that designed the regular fuel, the top tier, they do a good job. However, I'll leave that one up to you. That's just my personal opinion on fuel additives. The direct injection in these engines, we've had some injector failures. They're usually under unusual circumstances, potential bad fuel. Do not, under whatever circumstance, use E85, as it will very rapidly damage the direct injectors. And the direct injectors, they're not exactly DIY, and you really want someone who knows what they're doing work on these injectors, because they have a very specific seal and they're very easy to damage, and then they leak and they could easily create a fire. So this is important. They do have some issues from misfires when the direct injectors are exposed to E85, exposed to bad fuel, and They just need to be replaced. There's no way to replace one injector. You have to pull all four, replace all the seals, and replace the affected injectors. So that's something you need to know about this. Another issue that we've seen with these four-cylinder engines is a knocking noise that is just continuous. I mean, it scares you so much when it happens that you think something got damaged. It's actually just a little motor that controls the variable valve timing. I've talked about this in my other series, how that works. But when that motor fails, it's going to make such a loud rattling noise that it'll scare everybody. There's really not much to it, just a little motor, a little expensive, mostly covered under warranty. But after that, it seems like right around 19 to 20, as we cross into the year 20, we haven't really seen much of those. Usually they happen on higher mile cars. Again, somewhat of a questionable maintenance history. So be careful maintaining these cars. It's of the utmost importance that you keep up the maintenance on this engine because it's really tight tolerances. It's a marvel of engineering, but it really needs that maintenance. Moving on to transmission, and most people are afraid to buy this car because of the 8-speed transmission. You read horror stories on the internet, people complaining about them left and right. And yes, I will be lying to you if I don't say that there are some issues with the 8-speed transmission. However, I want you to know that these issues are limited to the 18 model. This was the launch year. Some of them bled into 2019, but that was about it. And most of these issues were fixed under warranty, and most likely today, unless you're buying one with a super high mileage, they're really covered under warranty. But here are some of the issues that you can pick up on as an owner, or if you're test driving one to buy it, that you know these are common issues and there's a fix for them, so you can take it in, get it fixed, and move on, and you'll have no issues. The first issue is, which is the first one that surfaced, I remember brand new cars did this. You get in the car, you take it for a drive, it's all warmed up, you're in park, you put it in drive, and all of a sudden there's a giant clunk or a jerk from the transmission. It's a very harsh engagement to drive. It's very random. Usually happens when it's fully warmed up, but sometimes it happens once, then it doesn't happen 2-3 times, then again and again. There was a software update, it fixed that, there was no issue. Just don't let it go. If you feel it once, take it in the dealership, it's TSB, there's nothing to it, it takes probably an hour at most, update the software and we're done. It fixes that problem, there's no more issues. Another thing is the way the transmission shifts. A lot of folks have complained about it. It's not very smooth, it's always hunting for gears and this and that. Now there is also a software update for that greatly improved things. But one thing I will tell you about this transmission, this is an adaptive transmission. The more you drive the car, the more it'll adapt how you drive and the better it will get. However, when you go buy a used one, it has already adapted to the previous owner's driving style. So you might be getting in this car, driving it, and why is it shifting like this? Because now it's trying to apply the adaptation from a previous owner to your driving style. So it is very important that if you feel like the transmission is shifting odd, you took it to a dealership, they told you there's no update, ask them to reset the memory. It's a very simple thing we do in the scan tool, Toyota scan tool. It takes 2 seconds. You reset the transmission memory, and no, on these cars you cannot just disconnect the battery. There's no manual way to do it. It has to be done with a scan tool. It's very simple, shouldn't cost much. I actually encourage you to do it every time you buy a used, newer Toyota. It really makes a huge difference in the way it shifts, and it's something that's highly recommended. Other issues that are actual issues with the transmission, also very limited to the 18 model. You might have whining noise or screeching noises from the transmission, especially on acceleration, sometimes on deceleration. This is a known problem. This is about the only actual problem that is known with this transmission. It was very limited to the early ones. I mean, I cannot possibly make this one simpler. Car's under warranty, 5 years, 60,000 miles, driving in a dealership. They're going to take it for a quick drive. Yep, it's whining. It gets a new transmission. But the transmission it's going to get is going to be a different, updated one. This is really early ones. If yours was built like in 17 or very early 18. This was a very limited problem. It affected a small batch of these. They quickly updated the transmission, and the newer ones don't have this. Doesn't mean you shouldn't buy an 18. Typically, I recommend you don't buy the very early first year, but this one has really held up well, and they really don't have, if you have the transmission problem, you're going to replace the transmission once and we're done. We've already seen taxis put a lot of miles on these things, and they really don't have that many problems at all. Moving on to the body category, and in this one there is the infamous sunroof clunk. Now, this has been a problem with Toyota since 2008. I don't know why they haven't fixed this problem yet, but it's still there. You drive into a driveway. As you're going over the driveway, there's a giant clunk in the roof, or like a hollow metallic noise that comes from the roof area. The repair is very simple. There are two metal, where the sunroof is, where it like folds down the metal, it just clunks against each other. All we do to fix them is tear all your car apart, all the interior out, and put literally plastic shims in these areas, and we're done. Why can't Toyota do that from the factory? I don't know. It's not a big deal. Maybe it takes them too long, whatever the case may be. But if you drive one with a regular sunroof, not a panoramic sunroof, we'll get to that in a second, regular sunroof, and you hear that, it's not a big deal. If it's under warranty, go get it fixed. If it's not under warranty, it might get a little expensive, but just know that nothing is broken, nothing is falling apart. It's just a noise. If it really drives you crazy, then get it fixed. If not, I wouldn't even worry about it, because it's nothing. Panoramic sunroof. Now, this was a very new thing with Toyota, where we have a panoramic sunroof in a mainstream car. It's a very cool option, but just know, you really need to treat that thing with love. Don't be playing back and forth and treating it abruptly and it's frozen and you open it. Just treat it with love, because you do not want to be that person at the service drive of a Toyota dealership with a broken panoramic sunroof because you misused it, and you are presented with a bill. It will be a moment you will never forget in your life, because even though the prices have dropped, the initial price was $12,000 for a whole roof assembly. There is no replaceable parts. There is really nothing around it, and the procedure to replace it includes tearing apart the whole car. So be careful with these folks. Make sure they work if you're buying one used. If you own one, take care of it. Don't use it in freezing cold weather. Don't just keep opening, closing, open. Some people, for some reason, just like to do that. And I've seen it with my own eyes. Very common problem with these, which made Toyota specifically develop a part. There's a little seal on the side of the panoramic sunroof. That seal loves to come apart. It's just a little rubber thing to cover, make things pretty. Initially, when these things first came out, we've replaced so many panoramic sunroofs at $12,000 each for parts, because that little rubber seal gets dislodged and eventually jams itself into the mechanism, and now the sunroof doesn't work anymore, or it just makes clicking sounds. That little plastic trim initially was not available as a service part. However, pretty sure after they got dinged with a bunch of $12,000 warranty claims, they wised up and they decided to make a service part for it. However, there are some dealerships out there, which we have run into a few, that have not got that memo. And when you walk in the dealership and you have that seal that's broken, they will give you a quote for $12,000. If that ever happens to you, do not go to that dealership again, because you can just replace that seal. It's not expensive, and it takes you 5 seconds, very DIY, and now you know you're dealing with a bad dealership. It's as simple as that. Folks, treat these sunroofs with love. They're very expensive. They're very reliable, actually, but treat them wrong, and they're gonna break your bank. The end of that story. Beautiful feature. Make sure you use it frequently. Don't just forget it and never use it, and use it one day and it's all jammed. Use it frequently. Take care of it. Take care of you. Simple as that. Last thing on body, and this one is not so serious, but It's very annoying. So the little run channel where the glass is usually the fronts. We've never really seen the rears. The rubber trim around the glass loves to come apart. I mean, we've seen this on newer cars with very low miles. You roll the window up, you roll it down, it just pulls it down with it. It's very annoying because eventually that seal rolls up and now you have a wind leak. You're driving, it's just whistling away. Very simple repair. Make sure you have it installed by someone who knows what they're doing, because they're very touchy when you install them. If you don't install them right, guess what's going to happen the next time it freezes outside? You lower the window comes down, so does the seal. That's just one of those annoying things about these cars. Not a huge deal, not an expensive thing, but it just gets annoying when something so small does so much and it's just right there in your face, right next to your glass. Moving on to chassis, and this car drives 100 times better than the one before it. I love the one before it for its reliability and simplicity. But this new chassis, TNGA, Toyota's new chassis, platform, whatever you want to call it, drives beautifully. But one thing I will tell you, they're low cars to the ground. So pay attention to curbs and, you know, when you park at the parking cement thing, be careful with those, because this car is generally lower than all your other Camrys. Something very common on chassis is brake vibration. Usually this is a Highlander Sienna problem, but with this Camry when it came out, it seems like 6 months have passed and we've had a herd of the same people we sold their cars for 6 months ago. They all came in, my brakes vibrate, my brakes vibrate, my brakes vibrate. That used to be a common thing with the V6 model, but it was now on the 4-cylinder. It's very simple. Toyota has updated some brake parts. There was also another one where my brakes pulsate and I have huge noise from the brakes. Every time you brake it sounds like a 20-year-old, 30-year-old tractor braking. They just make noise. Toyota updated some parts, so if you're buying one and you hear those noises and you feel those pulsation, they shouldn't concern you. There's an updated rotors, updated pads, and most importantly, the procedure to install the pads. I have a video, I'll link it right here, for how to install brakes if you're doing this yourself. This 100% applies to this car. You just need to place the grease in the right places. That's really it. This is not really a serious issue, but if you're buying one or you own one, it's still under warranty. More importantly, go to the dealership, have them replace everything. You got a free brake job. Life is good, I think. Another thing on these cars that also is an annoyance, this is specific to the SE and XSE models. And I love those models. They look very pretty, don't they? The XSE specifically, more than the SE, but could be the SE, noise over bumps in the front. We've seen a bunch of those. This is nothing new to Toyotas. Strut mounts. You hit too many bumps on that 19-inch wheel, you're going to destroy the mount. It happens. Just if you're buying one, if you own one of those two models, if you hear it, you're still under warranty, take it to the dealership. They will give you a hard time. Keep going, they'll eventually put strut mounts and they'll fix it. That's just the way it is. It's not a continuous, it seems like a Chicago special. I'm from Chicago and we have the most beautiful roads in the world. So potholes really don't help these models. So maybe if this is going to be a big issue, maybe consider an XLE or an LE, something with a little softer suspension. Speaking of XSE, I have never seen a Toyota model come in more for the dealership for bent wheels and popped tires than the XSE Camry. I mean, I have a personal customer of mine, very nice guy, lives in Chicago, and he has replaced 8 tires in his 2020 Camry with 7,000 miles. 8 tires already. They're very low profile tires and they're huge wheels, 19-inch wheels, and they're very, very expensive. And if you live in the great city of Chicago, when these things first came out, we have seen so many of them with stolen wheels and tires because they are super expensive than any other car Toyota makes. So if this is going to be an issue for you, perhaps don't consider the XSE. If you own an XSE and you live in let's say a place with beautiful roads, like Chicago. You already know this. This is not news to you because you've already had popped tires and bent wheels. If you don't want to deal with this, folks, get the LE, get the SE is better, or the XLE. Let's talk about some DIY stuff for this car. Folks, don't be afraid to work on these cars yourself. Yes, the engine looks very intimidating, the 4-cylinder, even the 6-cylinder. It's still a Camry, it's still a Toyota. You can work on it on your own. Just do your research, do your due diligence, understand what you're going into before you do it. This one is a little bit more advanced than the previous ones, but it's still a DIY car. You can still work on these things. They're not that difficult. One thing I will note, please do W16 full synthetic. Any brand you want, any brand that you trust, that's fine. Just use 0W16. Refer to my series on how this engine is designed and how it works for more information on that. But another one is the coolant. Remember, this car has electric water pump. So when you do coolant, and I know this is a little early, but in case you hit that 100,000 miles too early, if you drive a lot, make sure you understand the bleeding procedure. We're gonna raise the engine RPM to 1500. That's when the car is running, over 1500 actually, to activate coolant fill mode. But before we even fill the coolant, we're gonna take the hose off of the AGR valve and then fill the coolant until it comes out, and then we're done. Another thing is, this is even non-DIY folks, the wipers on this car. So you notice when you pull the wiper on this car, it hits the hood, and it makes it super hard to replace the wipers, and people often scratch the hood and now they're upset and like, why did they design it like that? Just know that this car has a mode that brings the wipers up. Very simple. Get in the car, turn it on, turn it off. As soon as you turn it off, pull the stalk up of the wiper and hold it. The wipers will come up and stay up. Then you can change your wipers. Life is good. When you're done, start the car, activate the wipers, they'll go back. There is that. Isn't that very beautiful? Very simple, folks. Don't be afraid to work on these cars. Just because they have a lot of fancy stuff doesn't mean you can't work on them. I always encourage you to work on your own car, because remember, nobody will take care of your car like you will. Just make sure you do the right thing, do your due diligence, do your research, understand what you're doing, and gather as much information and knowledge as you can. I hope this video was helpful or informative. I hope you learned something new. Folks, these cars are great cars. After all, we're looking at a Toyota. We're not looking at some endless money pit here. These are Toyotas. They're great. Don't be intimidated by them. But just because they're Toyotas doesn't mean you have to blindfold yourself and go into buying one. These cars love their maintenance. They love to be taken care of by their owners, and they require more maintenance than before, and specific maintenance than before. So make sure you take care of your car. It'll take care of you, just like any other Toyota. You can work on it yourself. I hope you learned something new in this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have a wonderful day.